up, and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Practical Planner Podcast. I'm your co-host, Thomas Kopelman. Here with me, Anne, and then Brent Weiss, who is the CEO of Facet Wealth. Super excited to have him on today, talk a little bit about estate planning and just really how advisors are using technology in their practice. So, Brent, thanks for joining us today, man.
Yeah, hey, Thomas, great to be here. It's a pleasure. I do have to issue one little correction. I am not the CEO.
Oh, okay.
I am a co-founder, but I'm not the CEO. I am our head of financial wellness because I'm a certified financial planner and a smattering of other like LMNOP certification. Just a quick clarification.
No, that's fair. That's on me. I should have been a little better prepared.
No worries at all.
But glad to have you here. Also, love the background. I love the wall. Looks so good.
Well, good. If you knew how much money I put into, I actually have a soundproof studio around here. If you knew how much money I put into it, it better look good. So, I actually installed these wood slats sound paneling myself. So it's about the only handy thing I will ever do around the house, but I feel pretty good about it.
I was gonna say, there's like videos on like all over social media of people doing that, and I've just accepted that I'm not going to be the person who can do that myself. But maybe
look, 98% of the stuff around the house I will not do. This seemed like something I was going to do. It was like it was the home stretch, the last thing that had to get done. So I hope for the viewers here, Thomas and Ann, ultimately that it sounds good when the podcast goes live.
Well, we know it'll always sound better than Anne's. Anne is always the one that has the problems.
I'm in the middle of a city, and I swear to God, like I was thinking about this. I was like, soundproof room. Yeah, like where would I install that? There's nothing around me that is like a remote close to that. So, anyways, yes, power washing outside the window today. So that's good.
Sounds all right. Well, anyways, let's dive right into it. So, Brent, like obviously you're a financial planner. One thing that we wanted to talk about today is just some of like the big estate planning myths that you see with, obviously all the clients at Facet.
Well, I've been, this is a milestone year for me. This is my 20th year in the industry as a financial advisor. And even saying that like gives me pause, like it's been 20 years, like holy cow. So what I'm going to share with you is like my what I've learned in my 20 years, not just here at Facet. I think, look, I've been doing this for a long time, not only being a financial advisor, but actually from day one of my career. Our take was that like financial planning done right should actually not just help you like build and grow wealth, but also help you protect it, which is where estate planning comes in. I think the misconceptions that I've seen in the industry is like, number one, you have to be rich to need an estate plan, right? I'd actually argue it's almost more important if you don't have a lot of wealth yet, because you're protecting things that matter more, your health, your wealth, your family, all of these things. Number two, this is my favorite, is like it has to be really hard to get and really expensive. But I think this is like the old school way, right? It's like you had to go sit down for a half-day consult with an estate planning attorney down the street. You didn't know if you could trust him. You had to write him a check for a couple $1,000s, and they send you this book of documents. You're like, I don't even know what's in it, right? And so I think what happens is like people are like, well, I don't know that I really need it. I don't really want to have to go to this hard, expensive thing. And they're like, I'm just not going to do it. And by the way, it's the one thing in my 20-year career, despite the fact that I bring it up all the time, that usually takes people like 6 or 9 months to actually do it.
I think that's a really important one to accept, because I think sometimes advisors are like, hey, why haven't you got your estate planning done? And, I think when you, especially as a new relationship with a client, there's a lot of things to get done, and we can all accept that is the least fun one, right? And so they're going to start with investments, they're going to start moving cash around, maybe they're going to pay off debt, they're going to do some of the fun things, and then eventually you're going to get to this quarter where you're like, what's on our task list? Mm-hmm. And what I found is I don't give them anything else besides estate planning when we're on the topic. Because other times you can be like, all right, let's get your backdoor Roth done, move cash around, whatever, and they'll do them. But estate planning is a big enough one in itself. And if you give them 3 other tasks, they're going to get those 3 done and skip that one. So I love that you did say that, because it's important for us to level set and understand how people actually behave.
Well, I mean, think about it this way too. I mean, to your point, it's not just estate planning and then understanding the documents you need. Then each of those documents have a set of like underlying tasks of like deciding who's going to be your executor, like who's going to manage your estate if something happens to you. Like, what about if you have kids? I have a 10-month-old daughter. Well, who's going to be my guardian? Right? If it's not my wife, is it my brother, my sister, my mom? Like, there's all these like different questions, and I think just people freeze a little bit, right?
Oh, for sure. And in private practice, I will tell you on this side of the house, what we would end up seeing are people coming in. They have this energy. Finally, I'm going to get my estate planning done, right? And so they meet with you for a half hour to do that initial intake. They like you. They sign your engagement letter, and then they kind of like peter out and disappear. It's like, you lost that moment, right? Like when they had momentum and then something else comes up in their lives and they're just like, I did away with, not having the estate plan. And then they come back and it's always right before a big vacation. And they're like, I got my tickets. I forgot I don't have my estate plan. This needs to be done in like 2 days because that's when my plane leaves and I need a notary, right? And so it's just
Right.
like this like pacing just is not great. And I cannot tell you the number of times when we did placeholder like wills, which you're not supposed to do in California. You're supposed to have a trust. But just because that person was going on vacation and the thing they really cared about that they had already aligned on with their spouse was guardianship. They knew like that was the thing that mattered to them the most, which is interesting because it's not binding, but you want to nominate the people that you love and that you trust to take care of your kids. But we would do like placeholder wills and just be like, please come back. Like when you're actually back from South Africa, can you please like?
Now, I guess the question is like, how many times did they come back? Right. I mean, look, like all kidding aside, though, I mean, like even as a financial planner, like we do a lot of work with you guys. I think you have now. By the way, I should preface this by telling everybody, it's like it doesn't have to be all of these things. It's not just for wealthy people. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be like expensive. I mean, that's like revealing the secret to all of this, right? But I'm a financial planner, and I had a daughter. And I'm trying to get estate planning documents. And now I'm a business owner, so there's a whole bunch of things going on, so it's pretty complicated. And when I sat down with an estate planning, and by the way, I like my estate planning attorney. But then the comment was, hey, you know what you need before we can get started is like, here's my big engagement letter. You got to pay me this retainer up front. And oh, by the way, can you upload all of your estate planning documents from the past so I can read them? And I'm just going, dude, you need to remove some of the friction and just let me come in and do this. Now, I understand as an attorney, I'm not one, by the way, but on his end as an attorney, there's a lot of stuff you got to get right. Maybe there's risk on the attorney side. But we have to understand when we think about, especially these bigger tasks. And by the way, estate planning also feels harder because the emotional connection to it, right? Like opening up a Roth IRA and putting in a couple $1,000s is a heck of a lot easier than like, oh, I got to name somebody if I die or if I'm like incapacitated. Like, oh, geez. Like imagine that weight on your shoulder. And then we come in and a lot of times traditional estate planning attorneys like even make it harder. And so part of the job then is like, how do we actually make it feel like something that's really important to you? You're protecting everything you work so hard for. And then how do we remove all of the friction from the process, which is, I think, where wealth.com, I mean, in many ways, but where wealth.com really starts to shine is getting rid of some of those friction points that are really going to stop people from taking action on this.
Well, that's like the founding story from Roth, right? Like he was basically sold a company, went through estate planning, and was like, this is horrible. I know tech. I know there's a better way to create it. So it's funny that you said all of that. And I actually kind of want to go back to the like placeholder will idea, because I think this is something that is, I don't think we've ever talked about it, but I think it does have a lot of value. One thing that we do a lot of times is like, you have a lot going on. You're in the middle of selling a business, right? Like, or whatever. It's helpful. Let's get a will in place because you're like 40 with 3 kids and you don't even have a will. And I know you're not going to start an estate planning for 6 months or 12 months from now. It is a pretty valuable tool that I don't think people talk about enough when you could use wealth to just be like, great, take 10 minutes. Let's get a will in place. Let's have this for the next year until you can go through that full process that realistically is going to take you 3 to 6 months.
And I think to Brent's point about friction, I mean, Brent, I love that you say that word because there is friction, because it was expensive, all of a sudden you get your like 3-inch thick binder and you're like, I'm never doing this for the next 10 years. Like it's just not something fun and not something that I want to like spend money on again. And so I better get it like perfectly right. The attorney wants me to get it perfectly right. And I want to get it perfectly right. But the thing is, whose lives don't change for 10 years, right? And so the idea that like, you should be doing it every 3 to 5 years, which by the way, every attorney is telling you to do. You're like, hell no. I am going to put that off. Like, thank you for checking this off. And like, moving on. And I will tell you, like, I updated my personal trust. So my first one was in 2021 and I just updated it. So like 3 to 5 years and it didn't feel that painful. Because, now that there are tech solutions, I had 2 kids, bought a house in that time, like for those younger folks who are like undergoing a lot of those like life milestones, like a lot of it is just going to be like a placeholder, but it's actually like a real document, but it's just moving with you as you live your life. So that word of like placeholder may not be totally accurate for what I did, but you get the point.
Well, I actually had a coworker of mine who's also a certified financial planner of the day, and I was talking about. I was actually talking to a lot of our planners about like how do we shift the mindset around what estate planning is? Because I think if we're honest, like estate planning has like a marketing and PR problem, right? Because it's always marketed like if you die or if you're sick. Well, nobody really wants to talk about that. But we were trying to think about we're not really selling estate planning. We are serving and making sure we're taking care of our members and the things they work so hard for. And so we're just talking about like how do you shift the mindset around people? Like how do people approach estate planning differently or think about it differently? And a lot of times, to your point, right, it feels like this binding thing. It's almost like you're handed this like tablet and stone that you have to like chisel out, and you can't do anything with it for a while. But he's like, you know what I say to my members? So we have a membership here at Facet. So that's synonymous for clients, but we call them members. And he goes, I tell my members, he goes, think of it this way. He goes, your first pass should kind of be like your B- paper that you'd submit to your professor, right? And it's like, then down the road, we'll worry about the B+ or the A or improving kind of thing. But just get the B- paper to start. And to me, that really hit because I'm not the greatest writer. I wasn't a big reader back in high school or college kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, I could do a B- paper pretty quickly. But you said you need to get an A in your 4.0, then you start to freeze. And then you start to think about the 17 decisions you have to make. And all of a sudden you go, oh no. So maybe it's not placeholder, but maybe it's like get the baseline documents in place that really matter to you. And we can figure out perfect down the road, but let's put something like, let's make progress, get something in place, and we'll figure out the rest. As to your point, Ann, like as your life will change probably in the next 6 or 12 months.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a really good way to look at it. I think depending on the group and kind of where they're at wealth wise really depends on like what the goal of this is, because for a lot of the really wealthy people out there, right, like generational wealth, helping their family, all those are really big goals. So I think if you approach estate planning as like make sure you have this in case you die is very different than like you worked really, really hard for this money, make sure it actually goes to the right places. Otherwise, why are we still working and building more wealth, right?
Yeah, well, look, where it is, I mean, you might actually know where this comes from, but I'm just thinking like in my head, like where does estate planning come from? I think it conjures up this idea of like actually having, 100 acres of land and big mansions and estates sitting on them, right? It's like, oh, if I have an estate, then I need, which leads to the misconceptions here around like I have to have a lot of money, there has to be something going on. And this is where I go back to like, I think it's actually more important for people who are just getting started in their journey. 'Cause I hate saying like that have less wealth, but are just getting started in their journey. Because look, I think really good estate planning for wealthy families that I've worked with in my career in 20 years, one of the main benefits, yes, is making sure your money goes to the right people, but is reducing your taxes. Okay. And look, I'm not saying you don't want to do that, but if someone's worth $100 million and they pay estate taxes and only give $50 or $60 million to their kids, like they're probably going to be fine. Right. But if you have $500,000, $1 million, you've worked really hard for it, you have 2 kids that are younger, you want to make sure they go to a good college, get a good education, are well prepared for opportunities in life, like it actually matters more, in my opinion. Right? Yes, like the dollars might be smaller, but I would argue the impact is greater. And that's why to me, by the way, if you want to talk about like my role as a financial advisor, and we were kind of chatting before the show started, is like I don't look at this as estate planning as like someone else's job. Now, I'm not an attorney, so I can't write the documents. I actually see it as a place for me to elevate my role as an advisor to like a trusted life partner.
Yep.
And be able to say, look, I care about you. I'm looking at everything holistically to make sure that you, your family, your kids are okay. A really important piece of that is estate planning. I don't happen to do it because I'm not an attorney, right? But we have a great partnership, a great team that'll help you get in place. It's easier using technology, using these platforms. Gone are the days of, taking a full day off of work and driving to an estate planning attorney's office. You can actually get this stuff in place quickly and affordably and have that peace of mind. Like that's the role that I think financial advisors should be playing in all of this. But I think so many people are like, hey, here's some information, go get it. And they don't actually follow up with accountability, the actions, the nudges to professionally bug our members to make sure they finally get it done.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of good points there. I think statistically, we know advisors are the push for people to get their estate plan done. We talked about it maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. I think the stats like 71% of people get their estate plan done because their financial advisor set it up in some way. So I think it is important for us advisors to know, like, if we're not doing it, we're not talking about it. I don't even know if you can really consider yourself a fiduciary because you're missing out on one of the biggest parts of financial planning, wealth creation, et cetera. So I think that's a really important part. And I think too, the nudges, right? Like going back to what we were talking about before, we can't just assume you say, you guys need an estate plan, go do it, right? And a lot of advisors do approach it that way. There's like, go do it. One, where do I do it? Who do I go with? Like the local estate planning attorney might not specialize in business owners that I know, or might be a higher or lower audience, might be more expensive or too cheap. But then on top of it, like the follow-up, right? And so I think, when we talk about these myths, I think people believe, one, the estate plan is done, I'm done. It's like, no, you just started. We have funding the trust. We have beneficiary designations. We have thinking about IRAs, for example, right? Should your IRA, the contingent beneficiary, be a trust? Maybe, but not when your kids are over 18, because now we have different rules on distributions. Like there is so much that we need to be included in. And if we aren't educating them on it, there's just no way that we should be expecting them to get it done. Because I remember like before I even started in this, I wanted to go through the estate planning process. Like I was told to do it, right? You're kind of out of college, probably earlier than most. I had no idea what any of it meant. Like it took me years of like studying this topic to feel like I knew anything about it. But then we assume our clients should know everything about it. You should hand it off and they should be like, great, easy, executor, guardian, where do I want all my things to go? We think they should know it and they shouldn't. That should be our job to teach them it.
Well, I mean, look, one of my favorite books is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And what he says is like, financial decisions aren't made in like spreadsheets, right? They're made around the dinner table. They're made at like soccer games. But like what happens after a meeting with your financial advisor is all of a sudden you go out there and you have two kids and you have hockey practice over here and lacrosse or like ballet. Like life happens and you're just like going, oh, there's just too many things I'm not going to get done. What I loved about what you said there is like the fiduciary responsibility of a financial advisor. Now that's a whole nother topic that we can tackle later, right? I truly do look at that and go, part of my job is to actually make sure that our members are not just building wealth, but protecting that wealth. The other part of our job is not just to give them advice, it's actually to help them take action on the advice that we render.
It's almost the bigger part.
Right, because like I always jokingly say, it's like, how valuable is advice if you never actually take action on it?
It's not.
It doesn't actually change your life, and so therefore it's not very valuable, which is why, and look, I know this isn't like, I'm not trying to make this a sales pitch for wealth.com, but I truly do love the solution. Like honestly, I'll say this after 20 years of doing it, because you have a platform online, it's easier and intuitive to go through, you can do it all online and digitally for the most part, right? It is a heck of a lot more affordable than going to Joe Schmo attorney down the street. It's a heck of a lot higher quality than the LegalZooms of the world. And you can actually get this stuff done. And also then you can update it when life changes, because it will. And as a financial advisor, I'm sitting there going like, how do I make my life easier as well? So I can spend my time building relationships, helping my members build and grow their wealth over time, achieve their goals. And then I know we have a great partnership where I can help them sort of check the boxes on things that matter too, right? The insurance side, the estate planning side. All of these things matter. And frankly, to me, like financial planning done right should include all of this. And then it's our job to make sure our members actually do the thing and improve their lives overall.
And going back to the nudges, I really use the resend, reinvite. Like I have my admin team go in there like every couple weeks to once a month and just reinvite people over and over and over until they get it done. Then we meet. It's on our topic list. It's on the follow-up task. It's in Right Capital. We have a whole spot of just their homework tasks that are there. Hit reinvite, and eventually it gets done.
Well, one of the things I always I introduced the topic of estate planning to a lot of people I worked with in 20 years. So if anyone's watching this podcast and I've had this conversation with you, you know how we do this already. But I always go in there and it's like, look, this is not going to be the most fun thing you ever do. It's not going to be the sexiest thing you ever do. It's never going to make you cool at the next cocktail party, but it will matter to the people that you care about most. And it's like, what am I talking about? Estate planning. And I always get there's this, like, I'm going to have to do this. Like Brent's going to like give me some homework and make me go do it. But then it's like, look, I do this because I care, right? I'm not making you do this because I want you to do some historically really hard task that does nothing for you. It's incredibly high value, and I want to see you get it done. And then at the end of the meeting, I ask for permission to professionally bug them over time, because I know this is traditionally the one thing that just sort of like hangs out there for a while, and we got to check in and say, did you do it? Did you do it? What questions can I answer for you, by the way, to help you prepare for your first step? But there is a thing around accountability, making a commitment, having something you're going to do, right? And then having somebody to hold you accountable as a coach to say, hey, and when are you going to get this done? Right? It might take you 6 months, but I'm going to be there. And when we get it over, by the way, we used to call these at my first company, we called them execution parties. Horrible name, but very in line with like what most people think about when it comes to estate planning. And It's the estate planning process. But they would laugh, they would giggle. We made it a little bit fun, as fun as estate planning can be. So it got people over that hump of how you really feel about it. And go, look, you're doing this because it's really good for you, your family, your health, and your wealth, not just as an event if you pass away in the future. And it's really important, like, let's get it done. How do we do that?
Totally. I want to kind of go to the next topic I wanted to hit on, which is kind of, how advisors can help. And I know we've hit on this a little bit, but the reason why I think it's important is the other day on LinkedIn, somebody posted about like how thankful they were to have wealth and how much it's helped their practice. And one of the advisors commented saying, I disagree. I've tried the different ones and I can't ever get any clients to get the estate plan done. And I have some thoughts here, but I'm curious on your thoughts on that and where the advisor can better help.
Well, look, I think first and foremost is making sure you bring it up as start of financial planning. I think, when we go back to one of the founding days of Facet, which is, we're at 9 years now, coming up on a decade. One of the things we looked at and said, financial advice in general is typically limited to investments in retirement planning. There's a longer story about like that's primarily how advisors get paid. You want to gather assets, you want to get the money, you want to charge AUM, blah, blah, blah. Like that's not how we charge, right? But this is not a Facet pitch. This is about planning. So I think number one is actually making it part of the financial planning process, right? I think number two is really helping people understand why it's so important, right? I think a lot of people come in, like nobody wants to buy an estate plan, but they do want to make sure that everything they work so hard for and everyone they love is protected and taken care of. And I think when you start having those conversations, people go, you know what, it is shifting how I think about it. So I make sure I bring it up and say, look, I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't having this conversation with you. It's like, and I understand, and this is why I always have a little fun with it, right? I understand this is not the first thing you're going to do. Okay. But it's on my list. I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to make sure you get it done. And I'm here for you along the way. And if 3 months from now we have a conversation, it's not done. It's like, hey, here's my list. Remember, estate planning's on there. So when are we going to get this done? Answering their questions, supporting them, making sure, and then being there to answer questions too, right, as they go through. And then making sure they get it done, at least in a relatively short period of time. And I think by the way, beginning of this conversation here, I started sharing with you, I think differently about what financial advisors do. Yes, financial advice matters, right? Helping our members with their spending habits, savings, investings, and diversification, all that kind of good stuff, achieving their goals. I look at it and go, one of the things I say to everybody I work with is like, I want to be top 5, at least top 10 on your speed dial when things in your life happen, right? One of the ways we can do that is by sort of being the person they can lean on, rely on, call on for anything that touches their financial life. And so I look at estate planning and go, it's not just something that we can convince someone to do. It's actually part of the role that we play as like a valued life partner, not just a financial advisor for our members. And I think when financial advisors make that shift and they start thinking like, how can I better serve my members holistically with their health and well-being, that I think you start to provide, first of all, by the way, if your members are calling you about these things, that's a good thing. That means they're coming to you because you are their trusted advisor in life, not just for the financial stuff. So these are some of the shifts that I've used in my career of 20 years. It's what we talk about here internally at Facet for our financial planners who work with our members across the country. And then wealth.com has become, quite frankly, the most seamless solution for us to connect the advice to actually taking action and getting those estate planning documents, in place.
Yeah. I love that. A few points I want to hit on. One, on like process side of things. One thing that I've found to be successful with is like, we meet with our clients, we have a bunch of meetings, we deliver a financial plan on every topic area, and estate planning is one of them. And then we take all those action items and build them into phases. Estate planning, except for people who are like pressing matter, maybe they're selling a business, we need some irrevocable trust, things like that. Estate planning typically for us comes in phase 3. That's the only thing we talk about. They know, great, we have meeting, that's phase 1. The next meeting's phase 2. The next meeting's phase 3. In that call, I set them up onto what they need to know. Whether I'm going to an attorney or I'm going to wealth, I am educating them on all the questions I know that they're going to have on the estate planning process. Like, how do I pick an executor? Should that be my brother? Should it be my dad? Trustee, same thing. Can my adult kid be that? Hey, I kind of have seen some issues with that with different siblings, right? Should it be my parent? Well, they're a little older. It can, but we need to update it. Should it be a friend? Should it be professional trustee? Like, there's just all these questions I know my clients are going to have. And so I prep them for it. And so when I go back to the question I had before of like, some people saying that their clients aren't getting it done. I think about it this way, right? If I'm like, hey, client, you need to do a backdoor Roth, go do it. They would have no idea. They don't know they need to roll IRAs places. They don't know they need to fund the traditional IRA first. They don't know they need to convert it. They don't know what documents they need to send to their CPA. You would never expect them to get it done. But advisors, for some reason, think you need to get your estate plan done. And then they come back 3 months later and they're like, why didn't you do anything? I invited you to wealth.com, for example. How come you didn't do anything? They're like, I didn't know what to do. I opened it and all of a sudden I got stuck. And, that really is a language issue, right? For us as advisors, our job is to best tee you up where we've already helped you think through all the pain points, all the questions. And then if you get stuck, we've also educated you that you come to me. You say, hey, I'm trying to think about this. Do I need a contingent X, Y, and Z, right? Or how do I pick this person? Email me, I'll answer the question, you go back to it. But if you don't set them up to be successful in it, you can't blame the client. You have to blame yourself as an advisor.
Yeah, I think that is incredibly well said. I mean, some things that come to mind for me, like from a behavioral finance perspective, is, I always say the 3 I's of financial planning are implementable, iterative, imperfect, and implementable. Right? The whole idea is like, how do we just get started? How do we take these small steps? I think this whole idea of like getting an estate plan, that's overwhelming.
Yeah.
But hey, and by the way, here's a small step. Sign up real quick, go on, complete a questionnaire. Ping me with any questions. I love this idea of preparing people in advance. Again, removing the friction points in that we talked about earlier. It's like you're going to have points of friction. How do we get ahead of them and make sure that that our clients, or members as we call them, are ready for that journey? Because one of the things that we always miss as planners is thinking that they know what we know. Of course they know how to name a guardian, or of course they know what an agent is, or within their financial power of attorney document. All that's going to happen is we're going to get there and we're going to freeze and go, oh, who do I name? I mean, usually like the first person sometimes, especially if you're like, you're in a relationship or whatever, but then you start getting like the contingent. Who's you going to name like as a second person to take care of this stuff? And you start hitting all these pain points. So I love that. Like, keep it simple and educate in advance. If you do that, you'll start to remove some of those friction points and you'll actually probably see people take action, protect what they're building, AKA called getting an estate plan.
Yeah. And I will say this too, especially if you are dealing with a couple, right? Like, make sure from the get-go to set the stage with the other spouse, because they will need to be coordinated on an estate plan, ideally, right?
Great
So
point.
like, who to name as a guardian, like if you're, or, an executor. Thomas, if you're having kind of like those kind of fact-finding conversations in the beginning, make sure that other person is in that room too, just because then all of a sudden that will cause, potentially delays, because they have to then relay the same conversation to their spouse.
Yes, that is a great. Look, I'm a big believer that a lot of financial choices for couples should be made collectively. That doesn't mean you have to, but I think this is one where you probably should be collaborating a bit and having a deeper conversation around, hey, what are we doing? What do we want to protect? What do we want to do for ourselves and for our kids, ultimately, if you have kids, kind of thing. I think that's an excellent point, Ann.
Which is great for you, Brent, if your goal is to be, in the favorites section of their phones, right? Like the top 5 to 10, like you want to do that for both the people in the couple, right? And guess what? Like, estate planning is that moment in time where you will have a surviving spouse. And so to be in the Rolodex for both spouses is super important. So use that actually as the opportunity. If you don't usually speak to the spouse, you have kind of like a part of a half of the couple that tends to engage you more. Engage the other half using estate planning too. It's actually kind of a neat reset.
I'll share with you 2 stories. One is how you've been a good financial advisor for somebody. It's something that happened at Facet here. And then number 2 is, one of the moments in my career that I'm very proud of. I'm not happy it occurred, but I'm very proud of. Number 1 is, when you think about what's the role of a financial advisor in the future with AI and technology, is it going to replace the financial advisor? I think it'll replace some of the technical aspects, but I look at it as not replacing me as an advisor, but it elevates my role in terms of what I can do for the families and the individuals I work with. It's just like, to me, it's like the greatest opportunity we're going to have. It can feel scary and daunting, but I think it's a great opportunity. But a couple years after we started Facet, we got a text message from one of our members. And by the way, I know text messaging, all that kind of jazz, but we didn't ask for it. We didn't talk about financial advice. It was a picture of he and his wife having their first child in the delivery room. Okay. Now you couldn't see some of the other stuff going on there, but he's like, this is amazing. I had to share this with you. Can I open a 529 plan from the delivery room? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen out there, you know that you've done a good job as an advisor when your members are doing that for you. That's the relationship you want to build with people. And that's the relationship that I take pride in. And that's the relationship we want to build with our members here at Facet. Like, that's really cool. Now, the final story I'll share here is a less exciting one. But I remember the day I got that phone call from one of my, I say clients at my previous firm, by the way, who called me and her husband had just passed away. I shared this story last week with our team of planners and like gave me chills, and it's very emotional, as I mentioned it today. That's a hard thing. That's a hard phone call to get. The thing I'm proud of in that moment is I was able to go to that client of mine and say, you will be okay financially, because we had done a plan for her. She had estate planning documents for her family. When I shared that with her, the sigh of relief that I heard through the phone, and I was able to say, call her Pam. That's not her actual name, right? You're going to be okay. Because she was asking, are the kids going to be okay? I said, your family will be okay. Go spend time with them. Call me when you're ready. I'll take care of everything else. That moment, I hope that never happens for anybody. It'll come for all of us one day, okay? Unless longevity sciences really kicks in, and who knows what's going to happen. Biblical ages are coming, right? Like, I don't want that to happen to people. But when something in your life does, knowing that you've put in the time and the work to make sure that everything's taken care of and protected, as an advisor, that's a very proud moment for me. And as someone who's had family members go through some stuff who didn't have documents for various reasons, you realize how important this is. And that's not to like carry too much weight on this idea of estate planning. It's just the importance of doing the right things when it comes to your finances. And I think more importantly, the really important role that we have as financial advisors and planners to do really great work for our members.
I completely agree. Well, I think this has been an awesome episode. Before we wrap up, I do want to give you a little bit of opportunity to talk a little bit about Facet for maybe the advisors who haven't heard about it, and then we'll wrap it up.
Geez. Yeah, you want like the 30-second version? We could go like on for like 3 hours here.
Elevator pitch for sure.
Yeah. Well, look, I always, when people come in and say, Brent, what do you do? I always jokingly go back and say, well, the boring version is that I'm a financial planner. And Ashley go, well, what does that mean? Like, oh, I'm glad you asked, right? I'm sort of setting up for the conversation. Here's the bottom line. I always answer this question not with like what I do or what we do, with what we believe. And our take is that unbiased, personalized financial advice that integrates into every facet of your life is essential to living well, right? Financial advice, being financially healthy is no longer like optional or something that should be exclusive to wealthier families. Our role is not just to democratize financial advice, but it's to reimagine the role of money in our lives. And so we started that company in 2016 with the idea, kind of a similar to wealth.com, of how do you blend together this idea of traditional financial advice with technology to lower cost, increase efficiency, access. We were virtual from day one before COVID, right? And so the whole idea is like, how do we make sure that we take really high quality financial advice and make it more affordable and accessible to everybody out there, to Main Street, not just to Wall Street. Now, I will say that the primary differences are, we do our work virtually. You do work with dedicated CFP professionals. We charge a flat membership fee. There's no percentage of assets thing. I hate that model, by the way. I know there's like a strong sort of belief around that, but I do not like it. Flat membership fee. And it's just something we're really proud of. And we've seen it by, we have about 20,000 members here at Facet, and we're growing. And we're proud of what we do, and we do great service for our members every single day.
I love it. And with your like spiel about like this isn't Wall Street but Main Street, I was like, you should have taken All Street. I'm really glad you did it because that's our name, but it could have fit perfectly for that.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, look, great minds think alike, and I think my closing comments will be this. I think something that people always get wrong about me is they think I'm running around telling people that all financial planners are bad. That's baloney. There are really good financial advisors out there doing really good work. And I always say when you're looking for a financial advisor, look for a good financial advisor, okay? Somebody who's like high quality, ethical, number one, right? Number two, look for somebody who does like good financial planning, so looks at everything holistically. And then look at the fee, right? I have very strong perspectives on that, but like there are a lot of good people out there doing a lot of good work in an industry where there hasn't been.
Totally.
Right? And I look at this and I go, for wealth.com here for us, look, estate planning isn't easy to get done, but there are companies out there who are challenging the status quo to say there are really important things that we all need. I'll repeat that we all need, regardless of our income and wealth. And I think wealth.com is doing a great job filling that gap.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Brent, well, we really appreciate you coming on and kind of diving into this topic with us. This was an awesome episode. And thanks for being here as always. And everybody, thank you for listening. Please don't forget to rate and subscribe, and we'll see you back here in a couple weeks.
Bye, everybody.